Well, once again, it's on a Friday, 6:30 in the p.m., and this is your host for the next few minutes of Hotline 21, United States Representative Danny K. Davis, proud to represent the 7th District in the state of Illinois. I always call it one of the most fascinating pieces of geography in North America that is compressed into a political subdivision. That is, as you know, there are 435 districts in the United States of America, and to be one of those is very interesting, very rewarding, and sometimes very challenging work to do. I'm proud to say that I represent the North Side, downtown, that is near North Side, not far north, but near North Side, a little bit of North Lakeshore Drive. Some of the wealthiest people in the state of Illinois live in that area. I represent the Chicago's Loop, the biggest commercial space in the state of Illinois. We go on across to the South Loop, the near South area, the Bronzeville, part of the Bronzeville community. Then we snake on our way over to Inglewood and go as far south in some places as 8000. But we also swing back and we represent practically all of what is known as the west side of the city of Chicago, from Lake Michigan all the way out to Highway 294, all of the west side, as well as the western suburbs, the near west side, where Alderman Walter Burnett and the vice mayor of the city of Chicago is the alderman. We represent some of the 3rd Ward, some of the 25th Ward. We represent little bits and pieces of the 1st Ward. But the 27th Ward, the 28th Ward, the 29th Ward, the 37th Ward, all of that is ours. The 16th Ward, part of that is ours. We go into Oak Park, Maywood, Bellwood, Broadview, Hillside, Berkeley, all just great pieces of geography. We have more hospitals in our district than any other single district in America. And to our dismay, the federal government just kind of held up, took away, or held back more than $750 million from Northwestern University Medical Center. Of course, money has been taken. All of this is research money, money that has been designated and designed for research. Money also taken away from Rush, from the University of Illinois, money from the University of Chicago. And actually, the federal government, their arguments as to whether or not the president can make those kind of decisions alone, and some of it has gone as far as the Supreme Court. And in many instances, the Supreme Court has held up the president and said that, yes, you, Mr. President, has the authority to make those kind of decisions. So people are just filled with anxiety, frustration. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to do it. Oh, they are wringing their hands. Government is being dismantled as people have known it. That is, thousands of federal government employees are being fired or laid off. They don't know where they're going to find another job. They don't know what they're going to do. All of those wonderful plans they were making and had made for themselves and their children, they are amazed and dismayed. And, sometimes different people are helping them. We try to help them in any way that we can. Sometimes we just say, hey, sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I've almost gone a long ways from home. Then at a time we also say, fret not yourself of evildoers, for they shall be cut down like the grass. And so things are happening. We will try and just acquaint you with what some of those things are, and then have some recommendations and some suggestions as to what to do. They that believe in democracy, Christians may say that they that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They will mount up like the wings on an eagle. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not grow weary, or they will not faint. So wait, but while you're waiting, organize, educate, articulate, demonstrate, do all that you can to try and influence the direction we maintain. And long time ago, some fellows sat down in a room and they said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, the more we dissect and try and understand what that really meant, and if we look at and deal with the history and development of this country, we will know that even as they wrote those lofty sounding words, those wonderful goals, that they didn't mean in a certain way, all men. They said all men, but they didn't really mean all men. They meant some men. They meant men who, in their estimation, were reliable, dependable, educated to whatever degree they could be educated, or owned property, who understood enough to be able to make decisions. And of course, they didn't mean black men at all, and especially those who were living in places where there was slavery. They did compromise and agree to count those people as 3/5 of a person. It's called the 3/5 compromise. where the North and the South, the big states and the little states, were all arguing about what ought to be. They had a great big compromise when they compromised on having a bicameral legislation talk. That is a legislative arrangement where you had a House and a Senate, and every state would get 2 senators, no matter how large or how small. But the House would be divided into congressional districts, and you would get representation or representatives based upon the population of your state. And the Southerners said, oh, that sounds all right to us, so let's count everybody. Let's even count the slaves. And the Northerners said, oh, no, you can't count the slaves. So they are slaves. They're not even free men and women. They don't have any rights to participate. But they did compromise and said, okay, for the purpose of determining the numbers, we will count the slaves as 3/5 of a person. And I'm told that that is the origin of the 3/5 compromise. And so African Americans, and they were called Negroes or niggers at that point, Niggahs, they were counted as 3/5 of an individual for the purpose of the census. And of course, women, they didn't worry about them at all. Women only got the right to vote a little more than 100 years ago. And that came about as a result of woman suffrage. People like Susan B. Anthony and Ida B. Wells and other folks who advocated and did it strenuously and came up with all kind of approaches and ideas. I'm told that some women even suggested to their husbands that not only were they not going to cook unless they changed their positions and allowed women to vote. I'm told that some women told their husbands they were not going to participate in sex activities with them unless they changed their position and give women the right to vote. So women orchestrated an approach and pushed and fought hard to get the right to vote. And instead of trying to make it easy for people to vote, there are members of the body where I work and serve every day who try to make it as difficult as they can for people to vote, and saying that they believe in democracy. I mean, that's like saying, I believe that you ought to have opportunities to work, but I ain't gonna take your application. That's like it's like saying that I believe you ought to have access to life and you ought to be able to get the blood that you need, but I'm understanding that Charles Drew, the doctor, the black doctor who did so much work on blood and its use and how to deal with it, that he actually died because he couldn't get a blood transfusion because he was black. He had an accident. and the hospital that was nearest to where he was that could have given him a transfusion wouldn't admit him because he was African American. And by the time they got him to where he could get one, it was too late. And I'm understanding that the top administration in this country is trying to erase all of that out of the history of America and pretend that it did not happen, or who attempted to depict that the Underground Railroad was just like running out there jumping on Amtrak and taking a trip to St. Louis or Milwaukee or somewhere, and that it didn't have anything to do with slaves trying to escape from slavery to slave-free areas, coming from the South to the North and trying to make their way on into Canada, where slavery at that juncture did not exist. It's unbelievable. You just wouldn't think. We just went through a process also where the president had decided to take it upon himself, although the rules say and the law says that you really should exercise trade policy with the United States and Congress working hand in hand and together to decide what the trade policy was going to be. Well, President Trump took it upon himself, and he says, forget you, Congress. I could care less about what the rules are supposed to be, what the traditions have been. I'm going to exact me some high tariffs on these goods coming into the country because these other countries have been taking advantage of the United States of America. They've been playing us for chumps, and we are going to put a halt to it. And so, lo and behold, our trade policies became topsy-turvy, and we're going to put a 25% surcharge. We're going to charge 25% to bring cars in from other places. We're going to charge 50% to bring stuff in from some other places. We're going to put the whammy on China. China has ended up putting the whammy on us. But before some of what the president had decided, he decided the other day that we had a hearing on trade policy. I happen to have been at that hearing because Ways and Means is kind of the oversight entity in the House. Before the hearing was over, the president let it be known that he was delaying for 90 days. And actually, as my dear friend Steve Horsford was testifying and raising questions to the trade ambassador, right at that time, Steve was the last person questioning the trade ambassador when the word came down or tweet came twatting or whatever, where the president had decided to delay for 90 days implementation of the policies. Interesting thing is right after that, the Dow and the S&P and the S&G and the indicators of trade went up, and the stock market rebounded, and people felt safe and secure again, or felt safer than what they did. But then I understand that later on it kind of went back. And so there's still confusion in terms of our trade policy. And many of the investors and many of the people who make those big purchases and all that kind of thing are kind of, uncertain on their P's and Q's. We finally got around, after some tries of passing the worst budget you could possibly get passed, where we are cutting money. The budget did. I am so proud of the fact that in the House, Democrats voted against. I couldn't hardly wait to vote against that budget because it went too deep in terms of cutting all of the entitlement activity. We also think that it is an indication, a clear indication, as clear can be, that the Republicans and President Trump are going after Medicaid. And if you take away Medicaid, you are taking away the opportunity and the potentiality for all of what we call the safety net hospitals, who basically live and thrive off of Medicaid. Some of them are going to be talking about closing their doors. They are already as scared as they can be. I am scared for them. I live across the street from a hospital. I am afraid that unless something happens, these disproportionate share hospitals are not going to be able to survive. They're not going to be able to make it. I'm worried about the federally qualified health centers. Some of the best feelings about work that I have been engaged in for more than 40 years has been the development of the federally qualified health center program. I used to work at the one right down the street. Not that it was there when I worked at it. I worked at the Miles Square Health Center. Miles Square is right there at Roosevelt and Wood Street. It's a fantastic health center, but it's one of 1,400 of these spread throughout the country. When I worked for them, there were only 10 of them in the United States. 3 of those 10 were in Chicago. My background happens to have been working in healthcare, and I was very pleased at one point to be the president of the National Association of Community Health Centers, NAC we called it, as we were developing these all around the country. And unfortunately, if we don't get the Medicaid money to keep them alive and functioning and all of that, we will be in bad shape, serious shape. So we got our work cut out for us. We got to keep telling the people, wake the town and tell the people that we've got to protect what has been generated. We cannot let it go. We can't go backwards. We have to keep going forward. It's been a pleasure being with you this afternoon. I look forward to being back next Friday And until then, do something good for yourself and something better for somebody else. It's been my pleasure. It's been my delight. And I will see you next week. Until then.